The lion and the lost boy. The scorching sun cast long shadows across the dusty African savanna. A golden-maned lion named Timba walked cautiously along the dirt road, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. He was the king of this land, feared by all, yet something unusual caught his attention, a small, trembling figure sitting on the roadside. A boy, no older than 6, sat alone in the dust, his tiny hands covering his face as he sobbed. His clothes were torn, his feet bare, and his cheeks streaked with tears. Timba's ears twitched. A lone child in the wild? This was unnatural. The lion took a slow step forward, then another, his massive paws making no sound against the dry earth. The boy lifted his head. His wide, brown eyes met Timba's. Instead of screaming or running, he only sniffled, his lips trembling. The lion hesitated. Something inside him, something beyond instinct, told him this child was not prey. With a low rumble in his throat, Timba lay down a few feet away, watching. The boy, exhausted, slumped forward, his tiny body shaking from hunger and fear. Then, in the distance, rustling. Timba's ears perked up. A pack of hyenas emerged from the bushes, their dark eyes gleaming with hunger. The boy sensed danger and whimpered, crawling backward. Timba stood up, letting out a deafening roar that shook the air. The hyenas stopped in their tracks, whining and snapping at each other. They were many, but they knew better than to challenge the king of the savannah. One by one, they slunk back into the tall grass. The boy stared at Timba in awe. The lion turned back to him, his golden eyes softening. He stepped forward, lowering his great head until his muzzle brushed the boy's tiny hand. The boy hesitated, then placed his palm against Timba's fur. Timba let out a deep sigh and, slowly, began to walk. To the boy's surprise, the lion turned his head as if beckoning him to follow. And so he did. Through the grasslands, past towering acacia trees, the mighty lion led the boy. Hours passed, the sun dipped lower, and the boy's legs grew weak. Each time he slowed, Timba would stop and wait. Finally, in the far distance, flickering lights, huts, voices. The boy gasped. It was a village. As they approached, figures rushed forward, men, women, all shouting. A woman broke through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. "Jabari!" she screamed. "Mother!" The boy ran, collapsing into her embrace. The villagers marveled at the sight, the mighty lion standing only feet away, watching over the boy like a guardian spirit. Then, as silently as he had come, Timba turned and padded away, disappearing into the night. The boy would grow older, and the story would be told for generations, the tale of the lost child who was saved by the king of the wild. And though Timba never returned to the village, on quiet nights, Jabari would sometimes hear a distant roar and smile, knowing his protector was still out there. That night, the village celebrated Jabari's miraculous return. Drummers played, elders chanted blessings, and the air smelled of roasting maize and fresh fruit. But as the laughter and joy filled the village, Jabari sat quietly beside his mother, staring into the dark horizon. "Timba," he whispered. His mother heard him. "Who is Timba, my son?" "The lion," Jabari said. "He saved me." Gasps rippled through the villagers. Lions were feared, seen as dangerous creatures, not protectors. An elder, Grandmother Zubari, leaned in. "Tell us what happened, child." Jabari recounted everything, the moment he got lost while following his father to the river, the night he spent alone in the wild, and the moment Timba found him. He described how the great lion had guarded him, led him home, and then vanished. The villagers exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. Some believed Jabari had been blessed by the spirits. Others thought he must be mistaken, surely a lion would have eaten him. But Grandmother Zubari's eyes gleamed with wisdom. "Timba is not just any lion," she said. "He is the spirit of the land, the guardian of the lost. Long ago, there was a tale of a lion who saved a boy, and now it has happened again." Jabari's father, a strong warrior, knelt beside him. "He saved you," he said softly. "And for that, he is now our brother." From that day forward, Jabari was no longer just a boy. He was the boy of the lion, and the villagers honored him as one touched by the spirits of the wild. But Jabari's heart longed to see Timba again. A call in the night. Months passed. Life returned to normal, but Jabari could never forget the lion's golden eyes. One night, as the wind whispered through the tall grass, Jabari awoke to a sound, a deep, distant roar. He sat up, heart pounding. It was Timba. Ignoring his mother's warnings never to leave at night, Jabari slipped out of the hut and ran toward the sound. The village was silent, the only light coming from the full moon above. Beyond the trees, past the river, he found him. Timba stood tall on a rock, his golden mane flowing in the wind. He gazed down at Jabari, his massive frame outlined against the stars. The boy's eyes filled with tears. You came back. Timba let out a soft rumble, a greeting, a promise. He had not forgotten. Jabari stepped closer, reaching out. Timba did not move. He only watched, waiting. Then, suddenly, another sound, a rustling in the bushes. Jabari turned and saw glowing eyes in the dark. A group of poachers emerged, their rifles glinting under the moonlight. They had been tracking the lion. One man raised his gun. No, Jabari shouted, stepping in front of Timba. The poachers hesitated, surprised to see a child with the beast. But the leader sneered. Step aside, boy. That lion is worth a fortune. Jabari clenched his fists. Fear coursed through him, but he stood firm. He's my friend. You can't hurt him. The poacher laughed. A friend? He's an animal. A low growl rumbled from Timba's throat. He stepped forward, his muscles tense, his golden eyes burning with warning. The poachers lifted their guns, but then, RORR. Timba lunged. The ground shook with the power of his roar. Birds exploded from the trees. The poachers stumbled back, terror in their eyes. One man fired, but the shot missed. The lion charged. The men screamed, dropping their weapons and fleeing into the night. Jabari stood frozen, heart pounding as Timba slowed, watching the men disappear. The mighty lion then turned back to Jabari and nudged him gently with his nose. Jabari let out a shaky breath and smiled. You protected me again. Timba chuffed, a sound of understanding, of loyalty. Jabari looked up at the stars. One day, I'll be strong like you, he whispered. And in the quiet night, side by side, boy and lion disappeared into the tall grass, forever bonded, forever legends of the land. Jabari and Timba walked together under the silver moonlight, their steps in harmony. The poachers were gone, but danger still lingered. The boy knew he couldn't stay in the wild forever. His mother, his village, they would be searching for him. Timba led him through the grasslands, toward the distant glow of torches flickering in the night. The village. As they neared, voices filled the air, worried, urgent. Jabari. His mother's cry broke the silence. She rushed forward, arms outstretched, falling to her knees as she pulled him close. Where did you go? We were so afraid. Jabari opened his mouth to explain, but the gasps from the villagers stopped him. They weren't looking at him. They were staring at Timba. The lion stood at the edge of the village, watching. His golden eyes reflected the firelight, his massive frame both regal and wild. Fear rippled through the people. Warriors raised their spears. Stay back, one of them warned. No, Jabari cried, stepping between them. He's not here to hurt us. His father placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Son, lions do not come to villages. It is not their way. Jabari turned, looking at Timba. But he is different. For a long moment, the village and the lion stood in silence, a standoff between man and beast. Then, Timba took a slow step back. His gaze met Jabari's one last time, filled with something unspoken, a farewell. And then, without a sound, he turned and disappeared into the darkness. Jabari felt his chest tighten. He wanted to run after him, to stay with him. But deep down, he knew the truth. Timba had brought him home. This was where he belonged. The legend of the lion's boy years passed, and Jabari grew into a strong young warrior. But he never forgot the lion who saved him. When he became a man, he led the village with the wisdom of the wild, protecting the land just as Timba had protected him. He taught the people not to fear the lions, but to respect them, for they were the guardians of balance. And on quiet nights, when the wind carried the whispers of the grass, Jabari would hear it, a distant roar echoing across the plains. A promise, a memory, a legend that would never fade. The boy of the lion. And somewhere, in the heart of the savannah, a golden-maned king watched over him still.